Hey everybody, Clint Shamblin here, Locked On Bulldogs. John Garcia here, recruiting talk today, and you know them recruits always get those views up, so stay tuned. We got lots and lots for you to check out.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, like I said, Clint Shamblin here, Locked On Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, as well as part of Locked On Atlanta. We support our Braves, which are right back here, as well as all Atlanta sports. John Garcia here today, talking recruiting. John, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Not as good as Braves fans, but I'm doing well in general.
There you go. All right, we'll take it. Now, John, you're a Florida guy, is that right?
Yeah. I'm from Miami, down here right now, actually. So yes, I am a Marlins fan. But we've had our day.
Hey, Jorge Soler is with you guys, so I can't fault you for that. That was a good pickup on y'all's behalf. John is part of our recruiting insiders here for Locked On Podcast. We love having him on. If you haven't checked out last week's and the week before, John is going to be a staple with us as far as we can make him go, because this man's got a lot of insight, a lot of intel. And so, John, let's start there. If you, really quick, if you want to hit that subscribe button to make sure that you keep on getting these news, subscribe. If you're listening to on any audio format, subscribe there, 5-star rating and review. We will really appreciate you doing so. So, John, I want to start by talking about something Georgia fans aren't especially happy about, and that's Stacy Searles and the offensive line recruiting. We had Pittman, who was, my gosh, beloved by Georgia all the way throughout, doing great work over at Archie now, as well as we had a coach leave because, hey, life got really, really hectic for him and really crazy in the college ranks. Can't fault him for that. We bring Stacy Searles in. He was at UNC, and they had an all-time historic offense while he was there. Maybe part of the reason is he was there. And a lot of Bulldog fans are wondering, can we recruit at the same level offensive linemen with Stacy now in the fold? What's your take as Stacy Searles as a recruiter?
Yeah, well, obviously hard to follow up Pittman and Matt Luke, as you mentioned. I mean, two of the best in the country and guys who are well known in terms of their personality. I think that's where Searles maybe perceptually doesn't hit the same note. So he's not known for this infectious personality publicly. But look, there's a reason Kirby Smart hired him. He's got a great track record. He's been everywhere, ACC, SEC. He knows what the desire is up front for Georgia. And I think all the top targets are well in front of him, right? A lot of uncommitted top OTs in the country, a ton of officials being set up for the month of June and beyond. We know Georgia is going to factor in with a lot of these guys, and a couple of linemen are already committed at this point with Bo Hughley as well as Raquise McElderry. So I do think that it's a good situation he inherited, of course, being a part of the national championship defense, staff. But there's also a lot still ahead of him. So if there is a little bit of an early, I don't want to say panic, because look, man, you just won the Natty, recruiting's going to be fine. But if there is any hint of that, it should be quelled to a degree because everything's still in front of this O-line class that Georgia wants to build.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The guys we already got, Bo, as you mentioned, Georgia guy himself, 6'7", 290, somewhere around that. 4-star kid, 7th at the position, 64th nationally, according to 24/7. He's highly rated. He's a Georgia guy. He's a big old hoss, offensive tackle. He's already in, right? So that's the foundational level. And like you said, a lot of these guys are still out there. Do you have one in particular that Georgia, I don't want to say a must get, but if we got this kid in the fold, it would really, really bump Stacy's up in the eye of Georgia fans to say, okay, maybe we shouldn't have pressed so hard on him.
How about a guy he was recruiting before he even came to Georgia? Samson Okunlola, one of the top offensive tackles in the country. There's some buzz that he has been watching a lot of Georgia stuff, grew up a bit of a fan as he started to fall in love with football as well. So good timing there. And he's a kid that again, like we just talked about, nowhere near close to ending the process. He just took an unofficial visit to Oregon, has taken 0 official visits. We do know he wants to take a few in the month of June, and Georgia, if I had to bet, would get one of those trips. Could get one in the fall as well. And I think he could be OT1 in this entire class when all is said and done. So being a major player for Okunlola, who's from Massachusetts, by the way, being a major player for him, I think is a big deal. We've seen UGA in years past go way outside of the footprint for top offensive linemen. I think what Xavier Truss is from like Connecticut or Massachusetts in particular. So going back into that area should not be too surprising for UGA. And I think that's going to be a common theme. There are some in-state and local recruits that are going to be factors in the O-line recruiting, but largely you're going to Texas, you're going to Iowa, you're going up to Massachusetts, New Jersey with the Boston's kid, who's going to take an official in June as well, by the way. I think Okunlola is going to be in that conversation. And again, I expect him to take an official to Georgia before all is said and done. And a lot of people think Georgia is in the best position right now. Bama just offered, so maybe that's just another Smart versus Saban battle down the line. But as things stand right now, I think they're going to be fine at OT. And for me, it starts with Okunlola.
That's a great one. Okunlola, look, he's from the Northeast. Yeah, many dog fans will think of that pipeline, I'll call it, because we've got Swift, a beloved dog from Philly, Isaiah Wilson, another guy from New York in that area. Fran Brown just got hired on the coaching staff, and he's got roots up in the Northeast. And everybody looked at that hire and was like, whoa, Kirby, what's this kid doing? No, Kirby's, again, playing chess over here with recruiting, getting the footprint that's outside of it. And so I love hearing that. I got a good shot at him. And if that's the case, I mean, again, rack in another all-time great left tackle recruit for UGA, and Stacy's on the trail. I have no fear in that. I think he's a great coach. And plus, in my assessment, every single time somebody says, well, hey, can he recruit? I always stop and go, guys, we got Kirby Smart back here. Like that's the main recruiter. And Stacy's only going to
wouldn't be hired. Yeah, he wouldn't be hired if he couldn't recruit.
Come on, y'all. Let's get real with it. Hey, we're going to come back with John, ask some wide receiver questions. But first, I want to let you about Rock Auto. Rock Auto is the best place to get every single car part your car will ever need. That's foreign or domestic. That's interior, exterior. That's performance, transmission, motor. Whatever you need, Rock Auto has the part for you. Right now, head over there in the How Did You Hear About Us section at rockauto.com. Put in Locked On. It lets them know we sent you. It helps us. It helps you because you're going to get the most reliably low-priced car part for your car straight to your door. You don't got to go into any Walmart and fear getting shanked in the middle of the night at 1 a.m. Don't do that. Stay away from it. I've been there. You've been there. Nobody wants that business. RockAuto.com is your place to go to get reliably low prices. Every single part your car will ever need. That's RockAuto.com. John, wide receivers, as this offense, I'm hearing, again, a lot of chatter from people coming into the offseason about Stetson being quarterback again, about the wide receivers. I just got done talking to some Alabama fan that was talking about the best wide receiver on Georgia becoming part of Alabama. I had to inform him that Burton was probably the third best receiver on our team last year after AD and after Brock Bowers. But I digress because receivers are a point of emphasis going forward in this Todd Monken offense. So what news do you have for us on wide receivers and UGA cycle that's coming up?
Yeah, I think, another one just like OT where the foundation is solid, right? Raymond Cottrell was a flip from the Florida Gators, big physical, Riley Ridley type of receiver. Pierce Spurlin is a unicorn, 6'6", receiver tight end hybrid that will continue this ridiculous tight end pipeline that Georgia has built. And then, like we said with OT, I think you're going to go out of state for the rest of the haul here. A lot of them are going to line up visits to UGA as well. One of the newer targets, Aiden Williams, is a kid that I think is paramount for Georgia to stay in the race with. He's a Mississippi kid. Ole Miss wants him. Georgia's going to have to really push against the grain to get him back on campus. Oklahoma involved there as well. I do think UGA stays in the race and has a hat on the table all the way through. Tyler Williams is maybe the most fast rising receiver up the rankings from down in Lakeland, Florida. We know UGA has done whatever it's wanted in the state of Florida, and Tyler Williams would be the next feather in the cap there. 6'4", former basketball player who's really developed. He looks like closer to 6'5" right now. So you think of him and Pierce Spurlin in the same class, and that could be freaky. But Tyler's really going slow with the process. No official visits taken just yet, but Georgia, again, going to stay in the thick of this race. Will get an official before all is said and done, probably during the season, because it looks like Tyler wants to take the entirety of the process before he makes his call. So that would be a big wide receiver Kid out of California, Rico Flores, is another one who's going to take an official to Georgia. He's visiting in June, committing, I believe, the first week of July. So there's been a lot of question marks, like where's Georgia on the board for Rico, as opposed to how Rico feels about Georgia. So if this offseason continues and Rico begins to impress a little bit more and Georgia starts to push for his commitment, I do think they could factor in. He's only down to 3 schools, so it's one of the 3. I think Notre Dame's maybe the favorite as we speak. But again, we've seen Georgia push and close for prospects seemingly at will at times. So I do think that Rico's an interesting kid to get on campus in June, right before his verbal commitment. So he's another one to keep an eye on as well. So different style of wide receivers among those that are still available. And again, just like OT recruiting, a lot of it is still well in front of the Bulldogs. And I think they'll counter that with smaller, speedier guys. Maybe Andy Jean is one to keep an eye on, a Miami kid, just decommitted from Miami, Florida, Georgia. That could be the battle with him down the line. So I do think that there's a lot in front of UGA in terms of the receiver position. But again, you've got that foundation as well. So I think it's definitely looking up. Everyone knows it's a priority. And obviously, if we know, the recruits know, and that usually works itself out.
Yeah, those guys that you listed, Rico out of Folsom in California, another West Coast kid. We've had a couple success going down to the Valley of California, Milton being the most recent one, but not the only one, certainly. Robertson before that, coming back from Cal to Georgia, didn't have the career we hoped he had. Brock Bowers again out of Napa. Like, this no-name guy, Folsom, California, is rising the list. That's actually really close to where I grew up, and so I know they've become a footprint on the national level now. But these guys you're talking about, even Raymond, they're taller, bigger. They're not the Arian Smith, right? A couple cycles ago, it was clear and evident. Kirby wanted that guy that could just do the go route and burn past everybody, and we got him. And now all of a sudden, 6'2", 6'3", 6'5", some kids out here, basketball players that you want to go up and kind of that Eric Gilbert type mold, that Sperlin, that Brock Bowers, we're like, oh, wait, we don't got to get a kid who's 5'11", 180 to really burn people over the top. We can just throw the ball up and see what the heck happens. It seems to be this philosophical shift that's happening. And I have all belief in the world that Todd Monk on the offensive side of the ball is not going to let these guys slip through. It feels to me like 2 out of those 3. And then, I like what you said. Maybe supplant that with a speed guy, an Arian Smith type track star. That's certainly going to be the case down there. And it is really interesting. You said it earlier, and I've noticed this more and more because I've noticed Florida fan, they're not chirping as much because, when we lock on to a Florida kid, I don't see Florida on that same level, on the same list as us more often. Is Florida really now Kirby territory and everybody else is just fighting for scraps at this point?
Look, I mean, I don't think it's that simple, but look, I mean, the whole issue with the schools in the state of Florida has been programs like Georgia, like Ohio State, Bama, Clemson, A&M that have just come in there and plucked elite player after elite player. So certainly, Florida, Miami, Florida State fans, when they do see that Georgia logo or that Bama logo, that they tense up a little bit because it's just been so consistent. And if you look at the success, I mean, my gosh, James Cook, Jalen Carter, I mean, the list is relevant recently. And if you go back prior, there's a ton of Floridians that have done incredibly well up at UGA. So, it is something for them to be worried about. And like I said, some of the 2 of the names we listed, I mean, Sperlin and Cottrell are Floridians that are already committed, right? Tyler Williams is from Lakeland, which used to be a Gators pipeline, right?
That's right.
All those Urban Meyer teams lived in Lakeland. The Pouncey twins come from there. I think Chris Rainey came from there. I mean, a ton of Gators have come through Lakeland High School, but right now I would venture to say he's more likely to leave the state of Florida. And then Andy Jean is a Miami guy, Miami Northwestern guy, a rival to Miami Central where James Cook went. I believe, I can't think of the corner who played for the Giants. He was from Miami Northwestern before he went to Georgia, before he got into some trouble. So look, Georgia's been able to go into Florida and, they've got 2 receivers committed from there right now, and they're targeting at least 2 more from that footprint. And you could even throw Carnell Tate in there. I know he had an official visit set. It got canceled. Until he commits, though, you just never know. And there's been some fluctuation as to when he might make a decision. So if you're a Bulldog fan looking at the IMG receiver, you're like, hey, take your time, big fella. And if you commit later in the process, maybe Georgia gets back into that conversation. So look, this, regardless of how it shakes out, the state of Florida will be critical in Georgia's wide receiver haul for this cycle. And they've already got 2 of them committed.
Yeah, DeAndre Baker, again, that pipeline from
That's
Florida and a bunch of other guys that just keep on coming through. I think it is this narrative that we need to understand, Georgia fans need to understand, is we like keeping the borders of Georgia. And I tried to explain this. I'm not a Georgia native, and I tried to explain this to Georgia fans, and they didn't like it so much when I tried to explain it, to say, look, yeah, keep the fence on Georgia. That's fine and well. We got some of the top talent per capita. But go pluck these top 5-star, 4-star kids, because Miami, like, just think about it. Look at all, if I was to list out all these wide receivers of the past 5 years that have done things in the NFL, in college football. You said Ohio State. Go look at these guys, Oklahoma.
My goodness.
Just, my goodness is right. These guys are out of this world. And if you can go pluck them. And that's exactly what we've done. So I love hearing that. We're going to come back and talk one more. We're going to talk about a couple dark horses that UGA needs to keep their eyes on. But first, we'll let you know about BetOnline. BetOnline is your sportsbook experts. Daniel and I, who's my co-host, not here today with me, we put our hard-earned money at BetOnline when we do over-unders. When we went to the draft and I put some coin down on Trayvon Walker to be number 1 pick overall, and that cashed, and it looks like that's doing well for me and will continue to do well because BetOnline is safe, it is reliable. They have fast deposits, fast withdrawals. They have over-unders. Season win totals are starting to come out. First line of first game lines are already out, and boy howdy, I'll tell you what right now, go get Utah, pick them against Florida, because my word, lay coin on that. And Daniel and I go to BetOnline for all of our sports book official betting, and they are the official partner of Locked On Bulldogs as well as Locked On Podcast. BetOnline, your sportsbook experts. All right, John, last topic. I want to know, every single year Kirby comes into recruiting, and every single year it started with George Pickens, really, for me, is when Kirby just said, before everything was wrapped up, he said, I want him and I'm going to go get him. And he plucked him out right at the end and flipped a kid. Who are some dark horses that we should be keeping our eye on? Some names that are starting to pop up for us right now. We already know of them. They're not an incredible new thing for us. Guys like Troy Bowles, we know him, linebacker. He's going to be very high on Georgia's list. So that's not really a dark horse for us, even though he's not committed and ongoing. But who are kids that we should keep our eye out on as the cycle goes, that Kirby could just say, nope, I want them, and goes and gets them?
Look, I mean, I was in the state of Alabama covering recruiting when Pickens flipped to UGA. That was as big of a surprise as I've covered in the recruiting process. So, yeah, I mean, there's always prospects that Georgia keeps warm and then pushes for at the 11th hour. I mentioned earlier, I think Rico Flores is an interesting dark horse because right now he's not pegged very highly to UGA. But as that opinion changes from Georgia's perspective, I do think that's one that could begin to shift a little bit if UGA does elect to push with the Folsom native. And I'll go back to Pickens' home state. I'll go back to the state of Alabama. You talked about going into Florida and plucking elite prospects. You got to do it across the way west on I-20 in Alabama as well. And you saw it with George Pickens. You've seen it consistently. Monty Rice was a great Alabamian who played at UGA. I think you're going to have to factor into some of these elite recruits in the state of Alabama because it's loaded on defense in particular in the class of 2023, and even up front. You know, I think Tamarian Parker from Central Phoenix City is a guy, again, I know I've talked about him on the show. I keep hearing a lot of Georgia buzz coming out of his conversation, and that's a big deal because he's a kid that both Alabama and Auburn desperately want to keep within state lines. I think Georgia's going to factor into the Carver-Montgomery duo of James Smith and Quay Rousseau. I think they could pull one or maybe both of them as they would look to play together at the next level. Those are guys to keep an eye on as well. And then I think, Tony Mitchell, he's one that's going to take his time with the process, long ago commitment to Tennessee. After that point, I was being told it was Alabama's race to lose, and then it shifted to Texas A&M. And now I'm hearing more, watch out for Georgia and Florida kind of at the last minute here. So his recruitment has had some ebb and flow to it. If it breaks the right way, he could be the next great, Georgia pull from the state of Alabama head to head with Nick Saban. Just like it's a big deal when the Will Andersons of the world go do the opposite, it's a big deal when Kirby goes into Alabama and pulls an elite prospect. So that back and forth is always fun to look at. And I think Bama's classes are higher in terms of the prospects in the state this year relative to most years. So Georgia's going to splash. It's just a matter of when and who.
You know what? All those names that you listed, that Rousseau, he stands out to me. I don't know, something about how he plays when I watch him on film. And you're right, it's going to be this neck and neck because guys like sticking together. Guys like playing together. They're kind of package deals. A lot of this wide receiver, why Georgia fans are all about the wide receivers, is because we know in the back of our head we're looking at Arch Manning, right? And we know he's got to have weapons coming in. And we keep on hearing that. I don't think Arch Manning cares who comes with him, to be perfectly honest. He doesn't strike me as the kid that really cares. He's going to ball no matter where he goes. So whatever. That's just my personal opinion. But this Rousseau kid out of Alabama, they want to play together. They have friends, but also, man, you can start getting 10 of these kids from in-state. Now just maybe, again, you mentioned Anderson going over the border. You mentioned a couple of kids, Monty Rice go. All of a sudden, if we take one of those, and it only takes one. Monty Rice was one of my favorite inside linebackers. He was the surest tackler I've ever seen. Not the most athletic, but man, such a sure tackler. You could have gotten the edge who can do that same thing, and that's where everything flips. And I think that's really, really important to look out. So Georgia fans, look out for Alabama natives and don't mess with Kirby Copper.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of who, right? It's going to happen.
See, that's what's so fun. It's like, what's behind door number 3? It's like, oh man, which door do I want? Because you're right. It feels inevitable. And truth be told, I mean, it would be stupid for me to sit here and say all the guys we got on our commit list won't flip. It's inevitable that it goes the other way as well. And I'm fine with that. Yeah. At the end of the day, I know this is how the game works. But yeah, I got my eye on that Rousseau kid. He kind of gets the blood pumping for me a little bit. All right, last thing before we go, Arch Manning, any update? He has 3 officials. Georgia gets the first official. Any news that we should know about?
Look, I mean, it's the same 3 schools, but one of them got a commitment today, right? Eli Holstein tops for Alabama. Huge news in the quarterback domino world that is recruiting. Now, look, is Arch Manning worried about another kid from Louisiana at the position? Probably not. But Alabama taking the commitment tells you, I think, a lot about where they might feel like they are in the pecking order for Arch Manning. Now, they could take 2 quarterbacks. They did it with Tua and Mac Jones back in the day. It's possible, but at this high a level, it's just not something you see. So conventional wisdom tells us Arch is going somewhere where there are 0 quarterback commitments, and there's only 2 officials set to those kind of programs right now, Georgia and Texas, the same 2 schools we have heard the most buzz for over the long stretch of time. And right now, I can't really envision Manning picking any school other than, the defending national champs or Steve Sarkisian's program out over at Texas. Join the reigning champs and continue the pipeline, or try to finally bring Texas back. There's appeal on both sides of that. Anybody talking NIL or other stuff, they got money. He's going to get NIL regardless. I mean, I'm over that part of the conversation. But when one of the schools in the mix takes a commit, that does perk my ears up. So that's good news for Georgia in and of itself.
Yeah, and you hear message boards and rumor boards, and you don't really I don't pay a lot of attention to it, but I remember back when this all began, Alabama made a comment somewhere along the lines that we're not going to take a quarterback until Arch Manning's decision is done, then we'll focus. Well, all of a sudden, they focus on another quarterback. To me, that means they believe it's a done deal on their end. Now, again, just like you said, Arch Manning is an alpha dude. He don't care who's on the roster. He's going to go where he wants to go, but yes, well said. It tells me more about Alabama's frame of reference, not Arch's frame of reference, and that is great news. And I like the simplicity that you boiled that down to. Either elevate Texas or continue Georgia. That because Austin and Athens, I mean, everybody likes a classic city, I understand, but man, Austin's a pretty cool city too. And Arch has said he wants a cool city. All right, so we got a lot of similarities. I think it does come down to that. John Garcia, thanks for joining us, brother. Appreciate it, Mark. You want to plug anything that you're doing?
Well, look, we're talking quarterbacks every day at SI. I wrote about 2 emerging quarterbacks that are going to factor in to the big national dominoes, and I'm going to reset those dominoes now that Holstein's off the board to Alabama. So we'll have a lot of Arch Georgia talk on Wednesday. So check it out, si.com.
Go to SI.com. Follow John Garcia at Twitter. We appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much. This has been Locked On Bulldogs, part of the Locked On podcast. Your team every day. We will see you guys tomorrow.